Next up, we have another panel, all right? So we're going to explore the truly dynamic and extremely cool space station that serves as a learning tool for science, technology, engineering, mathematics, as we know it, STEM learning, and how STEM activities are inspiring the space workforce of the future. As opportunities continue to grow in LEO and beyond, with advancement of commercial companies and future platforms, we're going to need a future workforce equipped to drive these future initiatives. This panel will discuss what's taking place now to prepare the next space trailblazers of the next generation. First, I'd like to introduce our moderator. He's incredibly handsome. He's got a beautiful smile, and ironically, he looks just like me because he is me. Day 3, we're running low on budget, so I'm doing double duties here. I would like to introduce my panelists for this year. All right. First up, I'd like to welcome Michelle Lucas, founder and CEO of Higher Orbits. Michelle Lucas has been inspired by space her entire life. After years of hard work in school, she graduated and went to work at Johnson Space Center to follow her dream. There, she was part of the Payload Safety Review Panel, and then she worked mission control for the International Space Station as a flight controller. After that, she then went on to be a technical instructor for astronauts. And along the way, she found a passion for inspiring the next generation, so she left JSC to pursue this new trajectory. Michelle started Higher Orbits, a nonprofit that uses space to excite students about STEM, and she runs programs all across the country and the world, encouraging students to find and pursue their passions. Michelle is honored to be an AIAA Associate Fellow. Welcome, welcome. Yes, 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 yes. Round of applause. Next up, Lori Labra, Vice President of Operations, Human Exploration Division at KBR. Lori leads a diverse team of more than 2,500 employees, generating over $445 million in revenue and providing world-class research, engineering, and technology development, information systems, human health and performance, operations, and mission solutions. Prior to her current role, Lori served as a program manager for both the Integrated Missions Operations Contract and Mission Systems Operations Contract at Johnson Space Center. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
And then we have Dr. Jim Pawelczyk, an associate professor of physiology, kinesiology, and medicine at Penn State University. He founded and directs the university's novel dual-title PhD program in clinical and translational sciences and has received college and university awards for his contributions to the university's teaching and outreach missions. In 1995, Jim was selected as payload specialist for the Neurolab Space Shuttle mission and flew aboard STS-90 on the Space Shuttle Columbia in April and May of 1998. He currently serves on the NASA's Biological and Physical Sciences Advisory Committee and is a member of the Board of Directors for the Center of the Advancement of Science in Space, manager of the ISS National Lab. Jim, it's a pleasure. Last but not least, Dr. Erica Wagner, Senior Director of Emerging Market Development for Blue Origin. Dr. Wagner serves as a Senior Director of Emerging Market Development for Blue Origin, a developer of vehicles and technologies to enable human space transportation. Prior to joining Blue Origin, Erica worked with the X Prize Foundation as Senior Director of Development and Founding Executive Director of the X Prize Lab at MIT. Previously, she served as MIT as Science Director and Executive Director of the Mars Gravity Biosatellite Program. She serves as a trustee of the Museum of Flight as well as a member of the National Academy's Space Studies Board. Welcome, welcome. All right. Going to transition over here. All right, double rows. Okay. So we're talking about STEM workforce on this panel. We had a chance to meet a little bit yesterday. So we're going to kind of go a little different direction. All right. We had questions here, but we're throwing those questions away. And we're going to have fun and have a great engaging dialogue. First, I would like to kind of get an understanding of workforce, right? We kind of talked a little bit about this. The first question I have for all you is define workforce for yourself, what that means to you. And also with that being said, what are the most important elements and things to consider when not only recruiting, but also retaining a diverse workforce? We'll start off with you.
Well, workforce can mean a whole lot of things, obviously. For me, currently, I sit in kind of a unique role because I work with high school students, but I've sat in the chair of many of you. Lori and I worked together a few minutes ago. It was like 6 years ago. That's what we're going with. And so being able to, workforce is finding a way to get those high school students engaged enough to want to keep studying STEM and then it's almost like a relay, right? Like, how can I get them engaged to want to work in this industry, and then I can hand them off to Jim to teach them, and then to Lori and Erica to hire them. And so workforce development comes in a lot of different shapes and forms, and we need to be very careful about thinking it's only one trajectory. There's a lot of different options. And I think what's really important with workforce development is to show students that, especially in our industry, they think it is like this narrow path of like, I can build a rocket or I can be an astronaut. And the reality is that it's so diverse. Jobs that obviously didn't exist when I was in school exist now. And so workforce development is constantly evolving, and I think we have to chase that constant evolution.
Yeah, so from a industry perspective, workforce for me is everybody that participates in this program. And I think we focus a lot on the engineering and scientists and researchers, but it takes everybody. It takes business people, it takes contracts people, it takes lawyers even, right? But our focus on workforce development does really focus on the technical side. And so as we get graduated, we hire a ton of graduating engineers and scientists, and so we look for our academic partners to provide that to us. But it's really about, once we get them here, how do we develop them, how do we train them, how do we retain them, and I think we'll focus on some of those things. But I think the biggest picture is making sure that the community, the world, this country knows what opportunities are here in human spaceflight. It's a great place to work, and so really all of us marketing that, everybody in this room. We have a large, at KBR, we have a large NASA support contract, so everybody on our programs is a recruiter. And so one person at a time, and then using lots of tools to recruit and retain our workforce.
So first of all, Maynard, thank you so much for introducing us. You make us sound so good.
Yeah.
That was your title. I'm just here.
Really appreciate it. I think my view on this is very similar to Lori, and I love the way this panel is set up with STEM and workforce. I see those as two different things. When we talk about workforce, for me, I think more line of sight. So it's the people that we recruit, it's the people we grow, and it's the people that we retain. And there's a lot of complexity and nuance in how we approach that. But if we were to sort of zoom out a little and try to bucket that, you can think a lot about people who ascend into those leadership positions and those that don't. And they spend more time in the trenches, on the lines, whatever your euphemism is, choose your poison. But each of those people, and particularly now, in the 2020s, and especially post-COVID, are really looking for a sense of fulfillment and a place to belong. And it's amazing how much that belonging has risen in the workforce development space. And it becomes a huge part of how we think about employee complements, and we actually spend a lot of time at the university level also trying to help people understand what it is that scratches their itch, because that's going to ultimately mean they're going to find a great match out in industry wherever they are.
So at Blue Origin, we sort of pick up from where Jim leaves off, and we're really thinking about a vision where someday there are millions of people living and working in space for the benefit of Earth. And that means that we have to find a creative, collaborative workforce that's ready to pick up on that vision, be passionate about that mission, and be ready to execute. And like Lori was saying, this is not just engineers and scientists. We're recruiting for lawyers and manufacturing technicians, folks that are doing our graphical design, folks that are doing our finance work. But that passion for mission, the ability to come and bring your whole self to the table and to create this future is what we look for. So when we're thinking about recruiting out of the college domain, a lot of what we're looking for is students who have participated in teams. We are always looking for, and it's not just rockets and satellite teams, but if you have been building boats, building robots, collaborating on a sports team, the ability to take something out of the classroom, make it real, and to understand the complexity of what it takes to bring a dream to reality is the thing that we recruit for most.
absolutely amazing. And Blue Origin's doing so much amazing work with Club for the Future, and I had a chance to be part of the O'Neill Symposium earlier this year, and being able to connect with students from a diverse range of backgrounds and introducing them to these new STEM topics. We touched a little bit yesterday about kind of the continuous school of dipping into the same pool, right? Going to those robotics programs, students that are already invested into the STEM subjects, right? Talk a little bit about what we're doing a little bit, well, maybe what we're not doing, right, to maybe think about students outside of those pools and other areas. You mentioned, sports and thinking about people that are connected with other programs where you're participating, doing things in team activities. What are some methods or some ways that we can do better to reach those students that are outside of those already STEM-based programs?
I'll pick up on one population. We've done a lot of work recently in our company to think about how are we recruiting veterans. I think that our military is growing incredible leaders and incredible experience. So we've been doing a lot on reaching out to veterans coming out of their service and into the workforce, thinking about how we support them in industry and grow that population. I think that that's actually an underutilized workforce pool, not just at the collegiate age, but looking a little bit further down into the career pipeline.
And I'm one who will stomp that really hard about we go to the same well. And I love TARC, and I love Zero Robotics, and I love all of these things. They're amazing. These kids are already geeked out about STEM, and that's a great thing. But we still have a deficit in our workforce. So how do we fill that deficit? You can't go to that same well. We have to meet students where they are. We have to perhaps look at things a little bit differently. I love that David Letterman in Indiana gives a scholarship to a student who is a C average student somewhere. We have lots of great organizations that give scholarships to the best and the brightest, and that is amazing. But what they may not think about is that that C student might be the best piece of workforce that you guys end up with because they're willing to have that hustle and that grit. And their C is because, I don't know, they're working 3 jobs and trying to hold everything down. So finding different ways to approach not just our usual suspects, so to speak, and programs. I'm going to be self-serving here. Thanks for putting me on the stage. We run a program where we serve STEM superstars, but about half of our kids are kids who are like, look, STEM sucks, but hanging out with an astronaut for 2 or 3 days, I think I can do that. Yeah. And trying to open that aperture of it's more than you realize, and it's okay if you're not a 4.0 student. Are you willing to work hard? Okay, you don't want to be an engineer. We need lawyers. We need astronaut experience managers. And so I think it's really important that we, in addition to the wells we're already going to, start thinking more broadly from diversity, from socioeconomic, and bluntly from a grades perspective. Yeah. Some of the best students I work with, yeah, they have 4.0s, but some of them are also the BC students who just, they're willing to hustle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so to really kind of foot stomp what you were saying, I think in general, we have a lot of overachievers that when they get to engineering school, they might make their first B, and then they're like, okay, I'm gonna do something else. So how do we keep encouraging people that you don't have to be perfect to be a great scientist, a great engineer? And so culturally, I think there's some steps, particularly in the US, for kind of our overachieving population. We too are using a lot of military reach back. Both military, enlisted military that are then going to college for professional degrees, but also for our technical skills. We're entering a new phase of development where we haven't been a lot before. So on one of our programs, we're looking for high-tech seamstresses. One of the interesting hires we recently did was from the Houston Ballet. So this person actually made costumes. Now they're sewing spacesuits. So going outside of the usual suspects, the usual universities, going to the advantage of working for a large company is we are worldwide, nationwide, so that I have access to other parts of the country that I normally used to not have to go to. And so it's really just about the diversity of the population you get, getting people that are excited about human spaceflight, and really bringing us all together with that.
Yeah. I want to kind of branch off what Lori said to pass it on to you, Jim. To think about kind of limitations, right? Requirements, minimum GPA standards, weed out classes in college. When I was in school, weed out classes were just kind of a thing, right? You go through your prerequisites, and if you make it to your program, you're lucky. You're like, I did this, and all those kids that failed, they just got left behind. And then you start to look back at it and you realize this weed out classes were detrimental to our growth, right? Think about all of those potential geniuses that could have been game changers in industry that got left behind because they felt that they weren't smart enough. What do we see, especially you're doing a lot of work in the university, what do we see as common barriers, limitations right now for that upcoming workforce, and how do we overcome some of those limitations?
It's a great question. You know, when you look at what we're doing right, and there's an awful lot of it, but places where we need to expand and maybe rethink how we're doing things. I'm going to start with the term STEM. We all love STEM. We're all here. We love STEM, no question about it. But to a lot of our population in this great country, it has become cliche. And we have turned it into a silo, unfortunately, in many cases. And when you think about the derivatives, whether we're talking about STEM, or we're talking about STEAM, or we're talking about STREAM, you know, all of those things are ways for people to try to hitch to that bandwagon. So you know, what we're doing is we're actually turning down the volume on those kinds of terms, because those are really what's, and we're turning up the volume on things like practice-oriented education, because that's the how. And if you're unfamiliar with that term, it really came to light in the early 2000s, and one of the big proponents of that concept was a guy by the name of Richard Freeland, who was president of Northeastern University. And what he recognized was that American education had developed in a way we sort of had the career and technical, or the vo-tech track, and then we had the traditional liberal arts. And he saw a need for something that was in between, that blended those very practical skill sets, but also encouraged people to think wider, to open up their aperture about how they saw the world. And of course, I'm at a land-grant university, so that resonates with me very much. But that's also how we think about our educational programs now. So we try to incorporate those authentic experiences wherever we can. You know, Erica talked about those skills of teamwork. You know, so you go communication, collaboration, inquiry, analysis, synthesis. These are higher order skills that are not necessarily about the weed out content, but it's how you work together and how you take information and take it beyond. So we lean in really heavily now to internship opportunities. And internships are not just that thing where you go and do schmoo work for somebody at a place. No, 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 no. It's far more than that. The internship should be a culminating experience where you find a place where you can marry your passion with a career that you want to do. That's what we're all after, because that's what makes it work. So we are always looking to grow those. Many of you are in a position to offer those opportunities. We are doing a lot. Thank you. If you're doing it already, please do more. And we will provide you people who are thoughtful, pre-screened, knowledgeable, and hopefully will become a productive member of your workforce.
Maynard, can I build off of that? Because I think we see that absolutely as one of the most valuable tools in our toolbox. Our interns, we have internships in the spring, summer, and fall. We are taking students out of undergrad and graduate programs. And I think that what we have found is that an internship is the single best tool we have, not only for understanding, you know, this is an on-the-job interview that's 10 weeks long, but I think also for the students to figure out if we are a cultural fit for what they're looking for. We have almost an 85% return rate from an internship to return to the company at Blue Origin. And I think that just speaks to this opportunity to really get to know one another and to build visions together.
And if I can piggyback off of that, I sat in a National Space Council STEM session, and I heard something that I hadn't heard from anyone else. And if somebody else is doing it, please come tell me. I heard from a young lady who is with OneWeb on an apprenticeship, a true apprenticeship. She had no idea what she wanted to do when she was graduating. She's like, I don't know, kind of like to do things with my hands. This could be cool. And so for 2 years, she's been taking classes while actively building satellites. She's going to come out with an associate's in mechatronics. And I asked her, I said, well, what are you going to owe OneWeb? She said, well, I'm going to owe them 2 years, but I have guaranteed employment for 2 years. Now, this is a student who flat out admitted she wouldn't have gone to university. That was not the path that worked for her. But that was, honestly, I've been in this industry for 25 years, and that was the first time I heard of an apprenticeship of that sort. So I would certainly love to see us do some more of that, because college isn't necessarily the right answer for everybody. And sometimes it's not when they first come out. Maybe she does this and then goes, oh my gosh, I want to go do a master's degree in something. But giving, again, not going to the same well. This is a student we would have lost if it was simply go study at university. But this apprenticeship has been really mutually beneficial between her and the company she's working with.
Now that is practice-oriented education.
Yeah.
Well done, yeah.
Yeah, and you're doing a lot of internship work with KBR. Can you expand a little bit on some internship opportunities and how that's kind of fulfilling that dynamic?
Sure, it's actually focused in 2 areas. One I'll start with is the technical skills, like vocational technical. One of our local universities or colleges, Community College San Jacinto, has started a program for high school graduates to enter this program, and within 6 months they're working for one of our local aerospace companies. Again, that practice-oriented education. Meanwhile, they continue to get their certifications and develop their skills, but they're also working within our company to do some of our machining, manufacturing, things like that. Fast forward to more traditional engineering, again, large intern program where we recruit across the nation and a large return rate. So that is our pipeline into that. But really, when I was growing up at Johnson Space Center back in the day, interns, co-ops came in and they got to schmooze and go to lunch and took tours. And now, every intern is to get meaningful work that adds value to the program that they're doing, but also to give them that inspiration of what we do today. So the intern programs, I think, are great. I mean, most of the large companies and even the smaller companies do them. I think that is critical, but again, to expand that base, to go to different universities, then not just always drinking from that same well, but go to different universities and really get the diversity that will make us better.
Laura, you said a really interesting thing in there. You brought into the mix the idea of community colleges. And I'm going to take that even one step further and take it to Michelle's level as well. When you think about your high school experience, there were those kids who were sort of the VOTEC kids. And in Pennsylvania, like in many states, VOTEC kids get sort of shepherded in a different way. So they're sort of tracked, many times we consolidate those facilities. It becomes off campus from the regular high school experience. And it works. We produce great welders, we produce great mechanics, people who are really, really good at what they do. I've sat for many years on our local school board, and in our community, we actually have gone exactly opposite of that. So we are one of 13 high schools in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania where we keep integrated career and technical education within the traditional high school setting. So in Pennsylvania, we call that a comprehensive high school. When we look at what happens with that, there's a lot of magic. And just to give you some statistics, in the general high school population in our high school, more than 60% of all students take at least one career and technical course as an elective during their high school career. And all of those students that are getting on the bus and going off to the VOTEC Center, well, guess what? They're not doing that anymore. So they have more freedom to expand their exploration of educational opportunity, to integrate with the rest of their student body, to be part of those sports teams and those other team activities that become so important. So there's positivity that happens both ways. And the number of individual stories that I could tell you about where a student, because they took electronics in high school, suddenly found themselves on an aerospace career path that they never saw coming. It works because we keep those things together. So please, in your thinking about how we develop and program education, think about how we keep all of those opportunities together in practice orientation.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned a great thing, Erica, about internships and that being an opportunity to find a kind of a welcoming culture, something that you're able to fit in. And we kind of had the conversation a little bit about that yesterday. And I kind of think about my experiences doing internships, right? And a lot of people that aren't familiar with my platform, right? Sometimes they'll see my headphones, they're like, why do you wear headphones? Like, what does that mean? And for me, it's always been symbolic of belonging, right? And inclusion. Because I remember I was interning right across the water here at the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard doing a nuclear engineering internship. And one morning, this lady asked me what I do at the shipyard, and I told her I was working as a nuclear engineer, and she looked at me like I was absolutely crazy. It was the most unbelievable thing, because I didn't fit the bill, I didn't fit the mold, the stereotype for what scientists would look like. And we kind of think about this new age workforce and wanting to feel included and wanting to bring your true, authentic self to the workplace. What are some things that we can do better, especially as a space industry, to create a more welcoming environment for people that don't feel like they traditionally fit in, want to be kind of their true, authentic selves, bring that flair to the table, because it's a two-way street. We both need to meet each other some way. What are some ways that we can navigate that? We'll start with you, Dr.
I think one of the things that we've used at Blue Origin is we have what we call our business resource groups. And these are places for building community and building connections from Blue to the communities outside of our walls as well. It's very much a porous boundary there, right? And our business resource groups support women and gender minorities. We have ones for people of color, recent immigrants, veterans, parents. There's a lot of different ways of building community and defining community. So I think one of the things that we found is that really helps with retention. It really helps to build a culture of promotion and advancement for our communities that need to see folks that have blazed the way in front of them and have reached back and lent a hand. So I think that building communities is a really big piece of that.
I think one of the things is, like, we are a big family, and that's what I love about this industry. I hashtag space family all the time. But like any family, there's some differences, right? We're not all the same. Aerospace companies are not one size fits all. And so one of the things that's a little different now, especially with as many companies, is there's a lot of different cultures, and that's a good thing. But students don't necessarily know and understand that as high schoolers or even university students. So the more you can get out into the community and share what you do, share what your company is like, the more students can make more educated decisions on what is the best fit for them. When I mentor students, some of them I know are perfect for a big industry, one of the behemoths. That's where they're gonna thrive. And then I have some that I know a startup is where they need to be. But unless they have that exposure, they have folks reaching out into the communities, mentoring, speaking, sharing. Every one of you in here, please go home and share what you do with somebody. That's how students can find where they fit. And I think that's how we all win together. I know, I'm so Pollyanna. What can I say?
Following up on employee resource groups, I mean, those are a great way for companies to demonstrate that you can bring your whole self to work. And then once you get those going, the sharing between those employee resource groups, and bringing other people in is just a way to say, we have a culture here that values you as a whole person, and you bring your whole self to work, and we're gonna do great things for human spaceflight. And that's the mission that binds us all, right? So you get this common mission and allow people to be their whole selves when they come to work, and great things happen.
I'm gonna say something that's gonna sound backwards, but it's actually a very effective tool that everybody uses. And that is onboarding before hiring. Now, what do I mean by that? We get to, at the university level, we get to see how a lot of companies recruit and how they work with students. The ones that are doing it really, really well, a couple good examples up here. Their offers go out to students many times in August and September. They've seen that student, and it's like, this person is good, they're exactly what we need, let's lock them up fast. And it's not a bad offer. The students come in and they talk to me, they go, what's wrong with this offer? They put it out on the table so fast, should I wait? You just gotta go, why would you wait? This is a wonderful offer. This is a great company. And then what happens looks more like this. That company will then say, hey, you wanna work on a project? We'll pay you. Every college student needs drinks and pizza money. So they get a salary. It's nominal from the corporation's perspective. But by the time that student then graduates and they immediately bump to full salary, what's happened? that student is already integrated to a large extent in the culture, and they're largely onboarded. And guess what? You didn't have to pay full salary to do it. So when you start to think of the economics of it, it's actually really smart, and it's a wonderful bargain between employer and employee where both win. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Love it, love it. And I forgot to mention earlier, too, that we are taking questions from the audience. And so I think someone's grabbing the questions in there. And I would love, this is a dynamic discussion. So as we're going through, if there's a flow of questions that make sense. You have one already?
Sam's up there waving,
okay,
so I
yeah,
think yes.
Go ahead, shoot. We want to make sure that the audience gets a chance to engage in what we're discussing here.
Excellent. Yeah, they've already populated several questions. So one comes in that says, many students select future careers at a high school level. Would you consider a collaboration or collaborative relationship to sponsor teachers and students to attend conferences like the ISSRDC to inspire future space pioneers?
Who would like to grab that one?
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about Club for the Future. So when we came to the market with our New Shepard rocket and started getting ready for our first human space flight, we actually held an auction for our first ticket. And much to our shock and surprise, that first ticket sold for $28 million. We sat there and looked at that and said, the best thing we can do is turn that back around into the community. And we went and we made $1 million grants to organizations all over the country to do just that kind of thing, to bring more students in, to bring more diversity in, to share the breadth of what is inspiring to us, and to build not just a pipeline, but a network of organizations that could help us to find more paths in and more ways to open doors. So I think that it's incumbent upon all of us that are in the industry, as Michelle said, to get out and speak and share, but also to find ways of opening those doors wider and bringing in students, bringing in teachers, bringing in community members.
And I'll say one of the things we do try and do, admittedly, we don't bring in teachers. I'm higher orbits, and so I can only navigate so many people for so many days. But we bring in students, and it is incredibly transformational for them to see all the different opportunities that exist, to have the conversations about what is it like, and have the one-on-one mentorship. We've brought a bunch of students to Ascend, and they're still talking about Dr. Zurbuchen, and every time I see him, he's like, so how's Kira doing? What school did she decide on? And it's a way to your point of onboarding, it's also a way for students to get to know the companies, the individuals. And so I think there's a lot of value in that. And so here's my challenge to all of you companies. You all didn't know that you were going to get challenged when we're up here, right? Sorry, not sorry. As you look at your conference registrations, consider partnering with somebody to give 2 or 3 high school students that they're working with a registration to come to one of these events. I know some of these events do STEM things for middle school. I'm going to be honest, a lot of times the middle school kids, they come and they're like, I just want swag. But I had a great opportunity at IAC in DC where I won't say what company, because I don't want his company to get mad at him. I had 3 high schoolers asking such great questions about the rocket that his company built and he sold. He looks at his admin and goes, I'm gonna need you to push my meeting that's coming up 10 minutes because I'm gonna finish answering these questions. And she's like, no, like that's an important meeting. He's like, yeah, these are important questions. I mean, that's his future workforce. And so having students at these events and being able to have them participate is a great thing for, again, everybody wins.
I'll do a shout out for the teachers. I think Limitless Space Institute is represented here today. I don't see if Casey's here. But they, in addition to figuring out how to go incredibly fast to do interstellar travel, they have a large education program. I just spoke at an event where they had about 25 teachers from across the world to come and visit locally to Johnson Space Center, do tours, develop lesson plans, develop curriculum for science teaching. So I think sometimes maybe we do focus on the students a lot. I think the teachers is a great thing. And again, if every company that's represented here brought 1 teacher to a conference, imagine what that would do.
And I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I agree with everything said here. We are doing wonderful things, and for those of you that are already invested in the kind of programs that are bringing teachers into forums like this, keep doing it and bring a second. You know, one of the most challenging jobs in our country today is to be a teacher. And I will also say that one of the best group of STEM-educated cohorts that exist in our country today is the American farmer. If you think about what a farmer does as an economist, as a biologist, as an engineer, as a soil scientist, and trying to interpret satellite data, they're doing it all, right? Because they're trying to turn a profit in the field. So, they're different groups. And what are teachers doing? What was defined in Pennsylvania by our Common School Act of 1835 said that they are to provide a thorough and efficient form of education. That's it. Is that what schools do today? No. They certainly do that, but they clothe, they feed, they nurture, they support, and until we meet the core needs of children, there's no headspace left for education. Because if kids are dealing with an environment of fear and uncertainty, they can't get on to the inspirational good stuff. That's what our teachers are dealing with. And so how, when they're trying to meet those needs, do they have the time to develop individual curriculum? That's where we can help, by bringing them to us and by us going to them and partnering wherever we can to say, yeah, we'll lean in, we'll help provide that content, because we have better than anyone else at this conference the most amazing educational resource. We have a single educational resource that every student in the continental United States can see in real time, and that is the International Space Station. I don't know of any other educational resource where every single student can have their own personal experience in real time. That's quite an amazing thing. So let's use that and let's keep going with it.
I love it. Great question. Sam, did you have a couple more?
Yes, another one is, what advice do you have for a small organization or any organization interested in starting a workforce development program?
Oh, both of you can touch on that with higher orbits and with the work you do with Blue.
Be prepared to not sleep. I'm transparent. Those of you who know me, I'm very transparent. It's hard. And if you're not the behemoth, sometimes it's hard to get in the doors. And it is hard to keep the wheels turning and the lights on. And so I would say my advice is, you've got to be incredibly passionate, because that's the only way it's going to work, because you are going to carry the pack for a long time. But people ask me all the time, they're like, how do you do this? You're insane. You're in 47 different places. And the answer is very simple for me. I love it. I love it. I loved my work at NASA's Johnson Space Center. I love the consulting I do on the side. What I really love is working with these students. And it's STEM inspiration, but don't kid yourself, it is also equally workforce development. And so my advice is simply, if you want to do it because you love it and that's your passion. Don't do it because you expect that you're going to make a lot of money off of it. From a logistics perspective, I am probably not the person to ask, because I am making it up as I go along some days, I feel like.
No, I think that covers it well.
No, cool. You have another one?
All right, we had a couple new ones coming in. Are you considering returnship for those female professionals who were impacted by COVID or caregivers parenting?
Well, I'll start there, yeah, because large organization. So I've never heard the term returnship. We, certainly for our employees, want to offer them benefits that there's no return, but they're still with us. So what I would say is, for companies, making sure that we offer to our current employees, to those that have left, not burning those bridges so that they want to return to work. We have a workforce shortage. So if there are people that were in this field that want to return to work, send them my way. We're always recruiting and hiring. And so it's interesting that we haven't seen that from our perspective down in Houston relative to COVID, but Certainly we have people, leave and then maybe return for many reasons, but for things like maternity leave and paternity leave, we want to make sure that our employees have great benefits that allow them to have a good work-life balance, have strong connections, not only within work, but outside of work. So that would be my advice for that.
I'll also point that there's a lot of emerging internships that are connected to fellowships now in the country. I'll name the Brooke Owens Fellows, who are for women and gender minorities, the Patty Gray Smith Fellows for students of color, the Zed Fellowship. There's a whole constellation growing. And almost all of them are also accepting non-traditional students. So for folks who are coming back into the workforce, they're reskilling, they're getting new credentials, take a look at the fellowship programs, because they're not just for the 19-year-olds. I think that that's a really valuable pipeline and a way of opening new doors. Each one of those fellowships not only connects students with internship opportunities, but also with executive level mentorship, with a very rich community of practice and other fellows that they can start to build their network with, and ways of starting to grow into the community that makes events like this so successful, that space family that Michelle was talking about.
Yeah. And that reminds me a little bit of what we talked on yesterday, right? Of kind of steering away from a pipeline to kind of showcasing that this is a pathway, right? And opportunities like Brooke Owens Fellowship and other programs provide these resources where you can now branch out and discover new ways, new potential opportunities for yourself. And it kind of keeps you inspired to be able to kind of see what's next, and you can shape your own trajectory. And so I think visualizing a pathway is really important when we think about these programs.
And what you just said there, Maynard, it's really important that, I mentioned terms where we're turning down volume and others where we're turning up the volume. Mm-hmm. We are turning down the volume on pipeline, because pipeline tends to imply linearity, and you start here and then there's that determined destination. Mm-hmm. And we are turning up the volume on pathways very much. There are nodes of competence that we want to see our employees develop. Not everybody does that in a linear fashion. They may go over here, then they go here, and they go backwards, and they grab this over here. And at the end, you go, there are domains of skills that they have that make them really effective employees. And every smart company recognizes that the intrinsic value of their company is found in the competence of their employees. So returning programs, again, a term I've never heard before, but professional development communities, the energy that we saw at breakfast this morning, all of these things are great because they are building value in the most important resource, which is the people.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll keep them coming, yeah.
Anne is a university educator in chemistry program, recently transitioned into microgravity research. How would you or we reach out to fellow scientists across disciplines to bring more people on board with the opportunities in this sector?
That's a great one.
There's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can do that directly with the appropriate federal agencies. Obviously, NASA is one. You can certainly do that in places like the ISS National Laboratory. More than happy to take on interns and trainees in trying to learn the microgravity domain. All companies do it as well. Professional societies like the Association of Gravitational Space Biology, they also do this as well. So lots of different resources, and even the people who are the space researchers on your campus. The Space Grant Fellowships, we should also mention those, have been very, very effective way to bring people in on university campuses. So there are a lot of resources out there. I think all you need to do is just start, lifting the rocks and peeking around the bushes, and you'll find them all there. But you have to just take that first step to go out and do it. We're happy to help.
One of the programs that we have through our Club for the Future initiative is called Postcards from Space. And it's a very simple idea. We go into classrooms and scout communities and groups of kids all over the world, and we offer them a blank postcard. We say, draw your vision of the future of space. Give it to us. We will take it, we'll launch it to space on our New Shepard rocket, bring it back and mail it home to you. And I'll tell you that the look of an 8-year-old when they're holding something that they created and sent to space, it really does change what they think is possible. But we've started to contextualize that exercise through different curricular modules that fit into different contexts. And with some kids we say, what is what does the constitution of your new space settlement look like? Think about the civics. Think about how this connects into what you're learning in social studies class. For some students, we'll say, what would be the artwork you could only create in space? What would be the products you can only create in space? And what we find is when we're out in these communities, we're also connecting with families, with parents, with teachers that are then starting to say, oh, the things that I do also connect to this world. And it's fascinating to see someone who's a parent that may be in the biotech industry that said, oh, I never thought about drugs in space before. Maybe I should think about where these things connect. So sometimes I think it's very direct in the ways that we build professional communities, and sometimes I think it's more diffuse and getting out and just sharing the stories, sharing the different frameworks of thinking.
Love it, love it.
All right, so the panel is discussing amazing internship opportunities. However, there seems to be an assisting workforce that already is considering those careers. So it begs the question of placement versus inspiration. For a new pool of students, what propositions do you have to inspire high school students?
Great one.
I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. So let me answer it how I think, and then you can tell me if I'm wrong. We believe space inspires. It's our tagline. And when we run our programs, I tell people all the time, I'm not actually trying to turn every kid into a rocket scientist. It's great if they are, but I'm trying to inspire them to dream bigger, consider greater possibilities, and at the end of the day, if nothing else, continue to leave the doors of STEM open. Not saying don't do the other things, but I am a big believer that the longer we leave doors of STEM open with students, the more possibilities and opportunities they have. I don't think there's a lack of opportunities for recent graduates into the workforce. What I hear from every company is not that I need 5 or 10 people. I hear I need hundreds. I hear I need thousands of people. And so no, they don't get to be CEO next week, but there is not a lack of really amazing starting positions in these companies for these students. And it does go back to, look, when I was considering going to school, there was like, I don't know, 5, or when I was in school, there was like 5 companies. I mean, probably more than that, but in the scheme of things, not a whole lot more. And now there are so many possibilities and opportunities that I think it's not a question of there not being enough. Sometimes I actually worry there are so many opportunities. The students are sometimes a little overwhelmed of like, oh my God, but there's this company and that company. And okay, but I like law, but I like science, but I like this. And so I think it just goes back to kind of the same things we've all been saying, is continuing to provide the possibilities that exist and getting them connected with companies that have avenues within which they're interested.
Lori, would you like to touch on that?
Yeah, so from a high school perspective, I would echo what Michelle said, which is it's getting them excited about space. And whether they choose to go technical or something else, when we have the world and our country excited about space, it's a uniting thing. So I think the benefits are just far beyond just even us providing this workforce. The benefits to our country are so much greater. You know, from a company perspective, we have more work and more jobs than we have people to fill them. And so that's been going on really for the last 5 years in particular. We go through waves, but the high school student that wants to get into these fields, there are many avenues. So I encourage them to keep going, get the STEM degrees, and there's plenty of jobs out there that are exciting, well-paying, and have an impact on something greater than yourself.
I'll amplify on one part of these great answers. One of the things I love about this particular conference is that it has such a healthy blend of industry, academia, and government. And you know, we of course we know, thank you NASA, you've been here with us all the way along. We appreciate that. International partners, we appreciate that. But think about year over year, the new companies that we see coming into this meeting. That's a really special thing. And now imagine that you are that student who's, you know, a senior in high school or starting college and now trying to figure that out. This landscape that is changing so dynamically year over year. How do I make sense of that? One tool that we haven't mentioned that I think is very, very useful, and we try to use that a lot on college campuses, are industry advisory boards. So our programs work best to produce the kind of future employees you want when you come in, visit our campuses, spend time, meet our students, critique their programs, critique our educational programs, and then we have a healthy exchange. Guess what? You get to cherry pick. You're seeing everybody early at that point, but you really do help us out. So if you're not participating in an industry advisory board at your alma mater or your local high school or wherever it may be, start doing that, because your presence there really does make a difference, and it really puts a much sharper point on what we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. Yeah, and we have a couple minutes left, so we'll take one more question. But I thought that was a really interesting question because it brought up a lot of things that we talked about, right? One thing we mentioned was like new career paths, right? New opportunities. And I think about when you talk about placement versus inspiration, student can come to an event like this and learn about opportunities in aerospace, but that doesn't mean that that's the pathway that they necessarily might go. That might spark some inspiration for them to go a biology route, go medicine routes, right? And there's so many different ways that aerospace and what we're doing here can now elevate and draw some inspiration. And we mentioned all these new career paths that are opening up. I have a friend that has a position as an astrofuture biologist. Another friend just came on board as an AI integration specialist, right? And you're thinking about these new dynamic things that are being brought to the field, and it starts from an inspiration. It starts from something. That doesn't mean that we're taking over from somebody else that might be interested in this work, but it's now expanding new opportunities and opening doors for new horizons that a student may never have thought about. So I'll take one more question, and then we'll wrap up this session.
Sounds good. It seems like we have a few students in the audience because there were a couple questions about GPA, and I know Michelle mentioned that a little bit, but how, if GPA isn't an issue, what can they do to prove their capabilities to your organization? What really stands out?
I'll start with that. So we don't have minimum GPAs. We welcome everybody, and so it's really framing your experiences. And chances are, if your GPA isn't great, you may have had some life struggles. I'll use my daughter's boyfriend as an example. His first semester, his mother actually passed away, and so his GPA went down, and he was so worried about it. I'm like, you overcame adversity, and overcoming adversity has given you life skills that no amount of university will ever teach you. So I would advise all students to have your story. When you get out of college, 4-year degree, you've got some amount of experience. I always tell people, if you waited tables, you can probably do anything. So take all of your experiences and figure out your story, because it really is, your degree has given you a finite amount of aptitude. And it's your attitude and your ability to work with people, your teamwork skills, your creative thinking, your passion for what you do that will set you apart from everybody else. And the GPA is just a number. And I'd also remind people, I had one of those overachieving daughters, right? Got out of high school, great grades. I said, that you got to college now, that means nothing. You get through college and you're summa cum laude and da-da-da-da. It means nothing after you get your first job. I mean, it's still important that you tried that hard, but at the same time, you just need that first job. And once you have that first job, now you're gonna get the experiences and life experiences that'll just, launch the rest of your career. So I wasn't a great GPA person, and I somehow survived as well.
Awesome. I wasn't a great GPA person as well, but look at us now, right?
Look at us
Here
now.
we are. Absolutely amazing. That's our time for this session. Michelle, Lori, Jim, Erica, thank you so much. Incredibly dynamic conversation. We can talk about STEM education and outreach for days. So if you see any of these individuals later on during lunch, make sure to reach out and continue this conversation. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.